Welcome to Servant Leadership Library Podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Paulukow, CEO and one-to-one of your friendly neighborhood MSP and cybersecurity IT firm. Today, we've got a real treat for you. Peter Barber, one of the masterminds behind Two Dudes Painting Company. Now, Two Dudes isn't just any painting company. It's a certified B corporation. Pete and his team are out there proving that they can run a successful business and still be a force for good. They're like the superhero squad of the business world. Now, Pete's not just slinging paint. He's also deeply woven into the fabric of the community. He's held leadership roles with the Lancaster Chamber, the Lancaster City Alliance, So We, and the Lancaster City Home Rule Commission. He's basically a Batman of Lancaster, fighting for a community with a paintbrush in one hand and leadership baton in the other. So grab your cape or your favorite paint roller and join us as we dive into Pete's journey, the story of Two Dudes Painting Company, and how they're making the world a brighter place, literally and figuratively. And so, Pete, welcome to Servant Leadership Library Podcast. We're so excited to have you today. What do you think of that intro? Wow, you are like Batman.
You really worked on that one, Nick. I got to give you props on that. Holy smokes.
Wow, I was like,
all kinds of superhero references. I've never been called a superhero before, so that's pretty awesome. I got to
make it colorful, Yeah. I mean, I got to live up to the expectations.
Yes. We are a painting company after all.
Well, thank you for joining us today. As everybody can hear, Pete's the superhero of Two Dudes Painting Company. But Pete, kind of introduce yourself to everyone. Tell them a little bit about yourself, maybe your family, community, where you came from, that type of thing.
Yep. So I'm a local guy. I mean, I was born here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Went through the Catholic school system here in Lancaster, and funny stories of that. So I went to Sacred Heart School, which is a great little Catholic school here in Lancaster City. My grandmother went to Sacred Heart. My parents went to Sacred Heart. I went to Sacred Heart. My kids went to Sacred Heart. So we all went through, and while, some of that story is like, oh yeah, did you have some of the same teachers? It's like, not all of us, but actually my kids had some of the same teachers I had at Sacred Heart.
Oh, geez.
You know how there's that longevity of the teachers in these Catholic schools.
What a dedication.
Same thing happened at Lancaster Catholic. My grandparents were in the first class that actually went to Lancaster Catholic out at the Juliet Avenue when they moved out to there in 1929. Wow. And then my kids were the fourth generation graduates of Lancaster Catholic. And so after being in Lancaster, wanted to get, kind of get out, see the world, understand what things were about for college, like most of us do. So I took that big adventure 5 blocks from my home up to Franklin Marshall College. Walked up. I remember I lived on campus my freshman year because I didn't want to have that college experience. I remember remember that first day of college when dad loads up the family truckster and you drive everything. I hopped on my bike and rode up, and I got in the line of like everybody to pick up their keys to the room. And the people like, what the heck are you doing here? And I'm like, I just rode my bike up. Come on. It's like, I need the key. Let me get in. So went to F&M, spent 4 phenomenal years there, and F&M's a great college, great liberal arts education there, and really have benefited from that tremendously throughout my experience. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. So my family is all here in Lancaster. In fact, I'm and Nick, you know this, but I think it's worth telling the story of. So I'm living now. I bought the house that I grew up in. Bought that from my parents about 27 years ago. So living on this house right in the corner in downtown Lancaster. And my daughter and her wife and my 2 grandchildren, they live in a house right behind us. So it's just great. You have this like little family units right there. She moved in there about 10 years ago, rehabbed a house and moved into that place. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, my son moved into that same street. He lives about 8 doors down from Amanda. So he and his girlfriend are there. So I've got the whole family on one city block in Lancaster City. And I tell you what, it is one of the most wonderful things, just like having all your family that close and really experiencing, just the day to day with our family. We have really close knit relationships with them. It's phenomenal having this great relationship with our granddaughters now, as they're just part of our lives. I come home from work every day, and you probably all have that experience of like when you were a young father and your kids, see you coming home and they come running up, it's like, Dad, I get that, I'm living it the second time around, as I pull up in front of my house, my granddaughters comes running, hey, how are you doing? What are you doing? And it is just like so heartwarming to have that experience
Oh,
and see your own. I mean, this is one of the best experiences about having grandkids is like not just experiencing them, but seeing your children parent and like
ah,
really like observing them and seeing like some of the behaviors that you knew that you exhibited as a parent, seeing them exhibit some of those
yeah.
behaviors, hopefully the good ones, and it's funny, it's just like talking to them about that. I mean, this is the classic stories like, oh my God, I acted just like you did, or oh my God, I felt like mom when I had this situation. And being part of that and being there to experience that with them and getting to
Yeah.
share those moments with them and just like all the serendipitous kind of experiences that you have of I talked to other folks that have grandchildren that their kids live in California or Arizona or were
Yeah.
even just in Philadelphia, and they're like, yeah, I get to see them pretty frequently. A couple times a year
Yeah.
we get together, and I'm like, holy smokes! It's like we are so fortunate we get to see them
See it
like
all
daily,
together. Yeah.
and so they're just part of the fabric of our lives, which ultimately is one of the things that I think is is pretty significant in terms of how like we've crafted our lives and some choices that we made along the way to like really make that a priority in our lives. And in retrospect, you don't always think about how deliberate some of these choices are, but they become, it's like, yeah, well, I wasn't going to go anywhere else. And even like the existence of the dudes, I mean, its origin story is in the birth of Amanda, my first daughter. And
Ooh.
so while I was a student at F&M that she was born, and so that that was kind of not exactly part of the original plan. And
Ah.
so the
God works in mysterious ways, doesn't he?
God does work in very mysterious ways, Nick. And but which we Karen and I talk about that all the time. It's like, my God, just imagine what would our lives be like if that didn't happen? If that was like, I wouldn't be having this painting company. And I think about the number of people that we influence and impact by having this business. I mean, what would I have done? It's like, I would have graduated from F&M with my history degree, and I might have gone on to who knows what, but it's like, no, I did this thing. We started this business, never with the intention of keeping it moving throughout that
Okay.
time. It was really uh, situation, like just an opportunity that we
Okay.
had to take advantage of. You know,
And what drew you
uh,
to painting though? Like, I mean, like, were your family's painters or like,
no, no,
are
well,
you just
actually,
like, that's what I
well,
had in the garage or what?
so the origin of all of that to that question of how do we get into painting. So I guess when I was in about seventh grade, we lived in the city, and you know how in the city there's these banks of garages of
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
20, 30 garages. And so my family had, we rented one of these, and it was just like this little tiny storage garage, like, 12 foot by 15 foot, barely
Okay.
fit. I remember going up there with my dad and the measuring the one garage to see if the Country Squire station wagon would fit into it, because
As the
those
back
things are
sticks out of it.
huge. It's like you literally had to put the bumper up against the front wall to close the doors. So uh my dad, you get these things from your parents, right? So many of these things, Nick, I know you had, from your dad, just
Yeah.
this hard work mentality of like, hey, look, if you want to do something, you've got to work hard, you've got to do things, you got to
Right.
make this happen, nobody's going to give it to you, do things on your own. So that summer we were just, it was I have an older brother, he's a year older than me, and we were like, what are we going to do this summer? Wanted to get some things together to get some money, and dad's like, well, why don't you call up Mrs. Heggie and see if she needs the garages painted. And so we called
Ah.
this lady, and she was like some 75-year-old woman that owned these garages, just a legacy of some investments that she made over the year, and said, and again, this was, my father was a school teacher. So, and it was like this great lesson of no, 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 you have to make this phone call. It's like, you can imagine little seventh grade anybody, calling up
Come
somebody and
on,
basically,
Dad, help me out.
basically asking this woman if we can paint her garages. So that summer, my brother and I painted all these like, there's like, I don't know, 30, 40, there's probably like 50 or 60 garages.
Oh, wow.
So we
Okay.
painted the fronts of all these garages, and we would just go up. We were pretty disciplined kids at the time. So first you had to wake up and do your paper route, and
Yeah, oh
then
yeah, that's how I got started, baby. Paper
and
route.
and then after you finish your paper route, then you could go and paint these garages. And so, and at that point, it was like do the, so we would, get up at 6 o'clock, we'd do our paper route. And then by 7 o'clock, we were ready to go to work. And then we would paint these garages from like 7 o'clock to like noon, because then it got hot in the afternoon and we didn't want to be doing that. We wanted to have some bit of summer.
Yeah.
And so, that was kind of like that early entrepreneurial experience of understanding like, oh, wow, somebody's going to pay us to do this. And, and we didn't, we're like I said, I'm a seventh grader. I didn't know anything about this stuff. And how do you do this? And so I was like, all right, works out. And somebody's paying us. And so we did all this stuff for her. And so we, had great experience, learned a lot during that process and just like built a foundation of doing things. So fast forward to, 6 to 8 years later, when I'm a freshman at F&M, and I've got to figure out, hey, look, life is changing from as I knew it, and I'm gonna have responsibilities to Kara, to this unborn child, to kind of my life in general, and knew right away that my education was going to be a foundational part of whatever happened. So it's not like dropping out of college was an option. And knew that my college education was going to be super seminal in whatever I was going to do. And and frankly, I got again, like I said, my dad was a school teacher. My mom was stay-at-home mom. She worked 1 day a week as a part-time nurse. So in a family of 4, and so I got a shit ton of scholarship money to go to F&M, and so don't want to squander.
That's a pretty fancy school you went to there.
Yeah, well, so interestingly, my brother, who's a year ahead of me, he went to F&M as well. Same scenario, got a ton of scholarship money, and and was able to get to school there. And so same thing happened with me, a ton of scholarship money. So and so the part of the dynamic when you get like this kind of scholarship money, it's for 4 years. They don't screw around with that. You have 4 years to get done. And so, it'd be really easy to say, and how many kids do we all know that are, we're on the 5-year plan, the 6-year plan. You can't be on the 5-year plan at F&M if you're, unless you've got like
that 5-year
a ton of
plan
money.
Means mom and dad are paying that bill. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, I got to do this because mom and dad weren't paying. I mean, they weren't paying much anything, and it was scholarship dollars. So, okay, figure this out, make sure that I can get this done. And so as I'm trying to figure out what's going to go on, it's like, okay, well, I've got to go to school full time with this, and I've got to work full time. And what can I do that I'm going to own my schedule, be able to dictate what I'm capable of doing? And so it really becomes, again, one of these moments of like, hey, I have to take self-ownership of what's going to happen, and I have to control it myself in terms, I can't depend on somebody giving me a paycheck, because I'm going to be beholden to their schedule and their needs and their demands and their expectations. So like, well, let's, so that summer, I got hired through a temp agency just to do some miscellaneous painting for them. And then we're like, okay, well, look, this is like working out again. And so let's see, so family and friends, we started putting feelers out and started doing this painting thing. So it was myself and my partner at the time, Brian McCaskey, who's a buddy of mine that I went to high school with, that we were good friends all through high school. And so that just kind of started and kept rolling. And so through the remaining 3 years at F&M, was working full time, and I was the one knucklehead that was like looking for the 8 a.m. classes, right? Because like you remember how like when you were a college student, how you're like picking the classes and you're like, oh, you're looking through the book, and like what are the classes?
Afternoon.
What are the interesting classes? Oh, I like this professor, and this class sounds really interesting. And so that's how most people like choose their college curricula. No, I was like, which classes are at 8 a.m.? Because I need to get, I need to go to start school at 8 a.m. If I do the 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m. class, then I could be at work by noon. Then I could work from noon through the rest of the day into the early evening and get home, grab, slam down a quick dinner, get to the library, study at night, and then start the whole thing over again. And so did that for 3 years. Although actually my senior year, I had this brilliant idea. I'll start taking independent studies because you don't have to go to class at all then, right? And this was the mentality.
How'd that go?
I mean, it's, it worked out great schedule-wise because you don't have to go to class at all, but your workload is like 10 times more than it is anything else. But again, like this was the trade-offs that I was like forging in my life. It's like, you know what? Like schedule and time, like work time and school time, like the dynamics of that were like, again, that's what's dictated by others. And then all the other stuff, it's like, well, marginal issues of sleep, you know,
Right.
that's not
And you can do
necessary.
that in your 20s. I remember that. I
Right,
remember that.
right. And
Staying up till
so,
2, 3 in the morning, getting up at 6, you know.
yeah, yeah.
I
And
don't know if I
so,
could make it today. I probably
yeah,
need 3 days recovery.
I tell you, I couldn't. So, that's really what formed the foundation of things is like, and, those are some tremendous lessons again around self-determination and, just like self-initiative of like,
Mm,
okay, this is what it's going to take to get things done.
right.
Like, I can't depend on somebody else to take care of myself, to take care of my wife, to take care of my young family. It's like they're dependent on me. I have to make sure these things happen. And by virtue of the work that I'm doing, I can either make it happen or not happen. And,
Yeah.
I don't know I didn't know anything about running a business, but other than, I have to make this work. And
You had
a
him.
lot of
Yeah.
times, sure, there were tons of mistakes along the way, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, so you just have to work harder or you have to work longer. And so
Yeah.
when those become your choices, you figure out pretty quickly how to maximize any of those
Yeah.
options and
And how
how
to
to
save
create.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, and how to create the
Yeah.
efficiencies. And it's funny. I still think about like, and I still employ some of these practices of like just the practicality of like little tiny things, right?
Yeah.
And it's all the stuff that we do. It's like, hey, how do you like effectively multitask in any specific area, or how do you like
Mm,
create this route of efficiency, both
mm,
physical and like psychological and metaphorical in terms of getting from A to B. And like, and it's like, and what's funny is it's like I realize how much it frustrates me when I see people not taking that most efficient route
mm.
in anything. And it's like, how do you not do this? And what I realize, it's like there's like some people never had to really think about that in the
Right.
same way because it didn't
Right.
the stakes weren't at the same level, right?
Yeah.
So the stakes for me were pretty high. It was about like my family. It was about
Yeah.
like just like financial survival for a
Right.
number of years. And so when that's your threshold of what success means, it's like you do anything to make sure that those things
That's right.
happen.
You fight and you dig and you scrape. I know the feeling.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story. You talk about like we with the intro we talked about like certified B Corp, and probably not a lot of people know what that is. But like, what drove like you to kind of build this? So I mean, the drive to build this organization we just heard, but like, what drew you to kind of make it a mission-based organization? Where did that come from?
So there's again this kind of multifaceted thing, right? Right. So Nick, you can appreciate. I mean, growing up in a Catholic household, you have to have purpose behind your life, right?
Yes, you do.
And even though I might not be a practicing Catholic at this point, there's still like these foundational parts of my life that
Yes.
are really important. So it's a belief system that is not necessarily just based on like doctrine or kind of some religious like
Right.
following, but it's like whatever. I mean, there's plenty of people, and we've all heard this story of like, oh, I'm just like Reformed Catholic, and I'm surviving Catholic. It's like, whatever, get over yourself with that stuff. While I might not be a practicing Catholic, I really do uh, credit my religious
Upbringing for that.
upbringing and
Yeah.
my education with creating some foundational things that
Yeah.
are really important to where I believe and how I believe I need to act as a person, as a business owner, and as a person in the community. And so, looking at, again, this path was never to be a painter, right? And
Yeah.
so how do you like create this, and how do you create a business that is going to live up to the expectations that I have kind of as a person and I have
Yeah.
in terms of our power and impact and influence within this community? And I found out really quickly that a business can have a whole lot more impact and influence than I can just as Peter
Individually.
Barber.
Yeah.
And so even from early days, it was always like, okay, well, and we didn't have a lot of money, but we had, we could volunteer time, we could volunteer effort,
Yeah.
we could like help community organizations, we could do different things. And even in terms of our exchange with our employees, like that was like really early on, and we tried to be like responsible business, the contracting world in general can be like pretty corrupt in terms of
Yeah.
how
Pretty
they
rough.
what the exchange is
Mm.
amongst the people that are working for you, right? So there's this like whole subculture of subcontracting, which frankly is pretty exploitive of the workforce
Yeah.
because there's no commitment, no obligation, to somebody else in the same way, right? It's like, okay, hey, you can work for me for $25 an hour. We'll stop. And there's no benefits, there's no commitment. And so like years and years ago, like we, it started with like, okay, let's just like be committed to this. And I remember like we put in like a health insurance program for our employees like early on. And part of it was like, right, I needed a health insurance program.
Yeah.
But I knew the challenges and the effort and the impact and the sacrifices that I was going to have to make to ensure that I had a health insurance program for me, for myself and my family. And it's like, well, these people that are giving their time and working for me, they deserve some of that same stuff.
Right.
So that was kind of some early on, just like recognizing that reciprocal responsibility that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And then also recognizing that, hey, we have this ability to be a force for good and can really do this in ways that are more powerful than like some other institutions and organizations. And so now, you can see this, right? So the largest and most powerful and most influential force in this world is business, right? You think about, oh, the government can do this. Well, we've all experienced the limitations of government, and just like some of the power. I mean, yeah, sure, government has power, but there are impacts and influences that maybe are, impacts of religious institutions, right? And again, we've seen how religious institutions can do things, but they have, NGOs, anything. It's like, okay, all these things are out there and they're important. I'm not trying to denigrate what they do or the impact. But who can be the most powerful? It's like business can do this. And if we can like get to a point where, more and more businesses understand and accept that responsibility of their need to really be powerful forces for good within our community.
Yeah.
And you see this popping up from time to time, and we can talk all day long about, what Amazon does to the world and how that's, created this thing. But there are some good things that they've done, and there's some good examples that they've created and set along the way. Now, can they do more? Sure. Can they impact things in a different way? Sure. Every billionaire in the world, I could take issue with what they're doing in a wealth accumulation, especially in a time of such injustice in the world. But, I likewise believe in free market and people's ability to make those decisions. And, hey, everybody has the right to make those decisions. And some people's opinion of what success means varies in different ways.
Yeah.
And
that's a good perspective about that. Like everybody's definition of success is different, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, even though we're not supposed to, we kind of compare ourselves to others, right? Like they're like, man, that just looks so easy, and maybe their definition of success is way different. That's a valid point to kind of consider for those that are leading too, right? Like, success looks differently for everyone. I think what you're saying is money isn't always the definition of success.
Yeah, and I don't believe it is, and I'm sure again people will take umbrage to that, but it's just like. I don't know, it's like, yeah, it's important. And, I want to make sure that I'm living, I'm making some choices about how I want to live and what the expectations are. But God bless like the school teachers and the nurses that are making some decisions. And, I think it's, it's kind of ridiculous what we're expecting of some people, and that exchange of what it means to earn money. And how we have either shown respect in that process or not. I mean, I think about, I've got some peers like in different areas of different businesses and different careers and different things, and I'm like, holy smokes! It's like I've got a really good buddy that I spend a lot of time with that. He's a reporter for the newspaper, and we've talked about some stuff, and I'm like, dude, it's like, I'm paying my painters
more than what you're making.
more than what you think about that, and it's kind of ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And so here, and we talk about this general distrust of the media, what it's like, come on, man, these guys are like, they're not making a ton of money. It's like they're just getting by in a certain level, and yet we're holding them to the standard, and it just creates, I think, some really interesting dynamics, and we have to like think about like how we value different things, right? How do we value somebody's ability to put paint on a wall versus how do we value somebody that like their time and effort in communicating the really important things that are happening in our world to us.
Well, and you make a point because as growing up as a child, right, similar Catholic faith, Catholic education, and I felt guilty, right? Like when starting a business, I'm like, well, I'm earning this money, I'm trying to do good with it, and so one of my religious mentors I went to the one day, and I said, well, help me understand this, like it feels kind of wrong, and like maybe I should stop. And he looked at me and he said, "Hey, listen, what I want you to understand is God created all of us with different abilities and skills and talents, very similar to what you're talking about. And he might have given you the talent to do that, which others can't. But it's what you do with what you earn
Yeah.
is what makes the difference, right? So since you have the power to do it and the ability to do it, then what are you going to do with it is really the cause and effect to the situation. So
Yeah.
go earn it and make as much as you want because you have the ability to do that because others don't. But how do you help others?
I would just twist that in a little bit different way that, so the ends doesn't always just justify the means, right? So
Yeah.
yes, earn the money, but how are you earning? Are you earning that money in a respectful way?
Respectfully. Yes.
Right.
Right.
So lots of people kind of cleanse their conscience by doling
Mm,
out dollars.
yes. You're
and
right.
and that I don't think is really as effective
By
as
taking advantage of other people is
right.
really the problem. Yeah.
Right. And so how do we do things? And that's part of our V Corps stuff is like understanding,
Mm,
okay, how are we respecting the people that are giving their time of us? And how are we making sure that they're being paid a living wage? How are we
mm,
making sure that they're getting the benefits they need? How are we making sure that like their schedules that we're asking of them are respectful of them as people and of their families
yeah.
and all those different things so that at the end of the day, yeah, we can still make some money. And are we making maybe different money
Volumes
than
up.
if we would have like cracked the whip and kept wages low? And it's like there's all these choices that are part of things, but trying to understand the dynamics around that and place the
Yeah.
value on the process
Right.
of how we're earning the money as much as it is on that end goal of earning those
Right.
dollars. Because arguably really treating all those stakeholders of the process
Mm,
as importantly as we do that end
right.
financial result, like that's where some of the power and impact is really made.
Right.
And that's how we have this opportunity to be a force for good, not just make $1 million and like donate half of it back,
Right.
but how about we make $750,000 and along the way we've like paid people fairly, given them health
Right.
insurance, given them a retirement
Distribute
plan,
wealth. Yeah.
and
And
made that
create
all
other
happen.
people that can make wealth too.
Right, because
Yeah.
the net of all of that for our society is going to be much better than
Right.
just like me like plopping a load of cash on somebody.
Yeah.
And it's I get it. It's a really long tail to kind of wag this whole thing, but
Yeah.
it's like you think about the impact that would have collectively if more and more of that would go on. And we've seen this kind of rise of kind of stakeholder awareness, like not
Right.
just shareholder awareness, but stakeholder awareness in terms of how that impacts things. And if you extrapolate this to its biggest level, right, it's going to create larger successes all
Right.
around, right?
Right.
So if everybody is like, being paid appropriately and has a lifestyle and has some piece of wealth, is that going to get more people that can buy my painting services or
Right.
need IT services or,
Right.
be consumers or, just be good citizens in the world? Yeah, that's all going to
Yeah.
happen. And so, I don't want to get too Pollyannish about this whole thing, but,
Yeah.
I think there is kind of an ideal, kind of an ideal world order that we can like hope for. I mean, it's not, I'm not espousing a socialist society, but there are these pieces of like, how do we have shared responsibility
Right.
for each other? And how can we create at least a dynamic where it's not a mandatory issue, but it's like something that's like, no, it's like let's make sure we're raising our eyes to the issues that are around us and being responsible in that space.
Right. Yeah. Just not ignoring it. I think that's great. I think it's amazing to hear kind of where you've come from and how you utilize your business kind of also to develop others, which is amazing, right? That kind of segues into kind of leadership, right? You're
Hmm.
creating this leadership level to be able to lead and teach these people that you work with on how to kind of also ignite your mission that you have of taking care of others. So you said in the beginning, like, oh man, I didn't even know what I was doing in business. So now you're, I think, what, like almost 100 strong, 80 to 100 people.
Yeah,
Like, that's amazing.
I
Like,
think we have
so how do you
90.
go from I'm doing this on the side, I'm just kind of digging in, and now, like, how do you become like an overnight leader? Like, tell us about that, because I need to know, because you probably figured out the secret sauce or something.
Yep, I got it all figured out,
Just
Nick.
perfectly,
It's
like
just
there was
like,
never a
you
bump.
ready?
Everything
You
went
ready?
perfectly.
I'm gonna lay it on you right now. No, I mean, you know this. I mean, it is not a simple path, and it's not a linear path, and it has not come from any magic wand of anything. There's been tremendous mistakes along the way, and there's been ups and downs and start all over again kind of moments. And and we've grown our business, and we've grown it in different ways over the years. And I've been doing this for 37 years now, which is a
Wow.
really
Wow.
long time.
You don't even
And
look 37.
and so just understanding. I mean, there's so one of the interesting dynamics of our business is that you know we don't have a product that we're selling necessarily.
Yeah.
We don't have a widget. We're selling time. We're selling just service.
Yeah.
And our dynamics are, and there's no like multiple of my service, right? So you think of like any of your software stuff, or kind of a
Yeah.
SaaS world, where it's like, okay,
Right.
you make one widget, but then you can like multiply that a million times. And you're like, yes, we found it. It's like, no. I've got like one widget, which is like 8 hours of somebody's time. And then for me to get another widget, I've got to get another person. And so this is all about like, how are you developing people in order to be productive parts of our operation? And so, like, you can't just like stamp out like that widget and here's one. Okay, you need another one. Here's another one. So we've done that, but we're like trying to take people and say, okay, here's our value exchange. Is 8 hours of our time is worth X dollars, and the only way that we get that is to bring another person in. And so, and unfortunately, we can't make people, like, we can't just duplicate people into the same product as the person before them. If we could do that, we'd all be set, right? And so, like, really understanding,
That'd be awesome. We need that cloning machine.
Yeah, but understanding like how you motivate people, how you get people, how you bring people in. And we have people from all different walks that come in and they want to work for us. And so, finding their strengths and finding their capabilities and really maximizing all of those things along the way. I mean, sometimes they might be a great craftsman, but they have no leadership capability. They might be like some of the nicest people in the world, but they can't paint a straight line to save their lives. And so
that'd be me.
And so trying to figure that out with our field staff, right? That's like part one of it, all this stuff, because that's how we started this. It's like I was out in the field painting every day. I was doing all this stuff and, kind of running the business. And so as that grew and eventually grew to a point where, okay, I have enough people out in the field and I'm not in the field anymore. And then so I'm just at the office, and I was in an office of one for a couple of years. And okay, got somebody else to work in the office with me, and then started slowly bringing. So then you have the dynamic of, the kind of widget, my people out in the field, and you have to manage those people and they have certain skill sets. And it's like, oh, shoot, now I need to, like, how am I developing the administrative skill set that I need in other people? And so that's the next part of the equation. So there's like different sets of people and different skills that I need to make sure that we're getting there, and just like structuring and organizing that in different ways. And how is all of this stuff that we're doing, how am I imbuing kind of my bigger belief system of like, okay, be a good responsible business into everybody that's there? Because what made us successful early on was the fact that Brian and I were out there, we were painting every day, and our clients loved us, and we were like really nice, good, fresh young Catholic schoolboys that were committed and friendly and could do all this stuff. And I show up at your house and you're like, oh great, Pete's here. And we got to be really close to some of our clients over the years. And then all of a sudden I'm not there in their house
Right. You
40
got to
hours,
duplicate
but
Pete.
I'm putting somebody else there,
Yeah.
and somebody else that they better, like, I have to make sure that they trust and they can like be the kind of person that I was. And so to this day, we talk about this. I have, I get involved with orientation of our new employees. Like I do the first like half hour. It's supposed to be a half hour, usually stretches into 45 minutes to an hour. So I get started talking on stories, kind of like I'm doing right now. And, one of the thing is, people have certain expectations of who a dude is. When
Mm,
you say the dudes are coming to your house, it's like you immediately have some notion of the kind of person I'm going to put there.
right.
And so we have to make sure that those people are living up to that expectation.
Mm.
And and so it's funny because I still have these buses that I drive around town, and like and one of the things, and this happens mostly with our office staff, is like, oh, you got to come with me and just like take a drive in one of the buses, because people see that and they like know it and they expect something, right? And like
Uh,
it's like, Pete, like there's literally people waving to you, and I'm like, they just see the bus. It's like they know that this is the bus, and so they have certain expectations, and I beep the horn and I wave back to them, because a lot of times it is people I know, or it's just like,
yeah.
it's just somebody that recognizes the vehicle and has a good time. I mean, I was at Turkey Hill the other day, and it's a Sunday morning. I pull up. I'm just getting the New York Times, and this guy's like sitting in his car, just like cutting a butt. Looks like he was like out all night the night before. He was just on his way home at like 9 in the morning. He's like, hey, is that your van, your truck there? It's like, yeah, it's two dudes. He's like, I remember you guys years ago. He's like, you had those buses you used to run around. He's like, I'm really proud of how you grew your business. And I was
Oh,
like,
that's cool.
like, who, what is this? This is like real. I mean, it's actually, it really touched me. I'm like, that is like awesome. Right. So here's this like crusty, rusty, 65, 70-year-old dude that's just like, going to get his cigarettes. And he's like telling me he's proud of my business and
Oh,
how
that's
we've
cool.
grown. And I'm like, this is awesome. But that's, and my reaction to that, because when he first, he's like, hey, is that your truck? Or, it'd be really easy for me just to like turn and just like scowl at him and walk away.
Yeah.
But it's like, no. I have to like, I'm representative of the company, and whatever. It's easy for me to do. It's my business, and so I can like turn to him and be like, yeah, hey, how you doing? I can be super friendly. But that's the kind of story that I would tell my employees on that
Mm.
first day of orientation. It's like, you know what? You are going to have a time that there's going to be, and it's like usually where we do these orientations to a group of people. The three of you might all be walking into Turkey Hill together, and you're all going to be wearing your two dude shirts. And you know what? Somebody inevitably is going to see the three of you walking up, and they're going to say, what is this? I thought it was two dudes painting. There's three of you here. And I said, you know what your reaction is going to be? And they're like, what? It's like, you are going to laugh. Like that is the first time you heard that joke. And that's going to happen multiple times, because that's what people are expecting you to be friendly. People are they're going to approach you in ways, that you might not be used to. I mean, we've like kind of isolated our society in such ways that, when you go to Turkey Hill and you're picking up your iced tea or your ice cream or doing, getting a snack in the morning, it's kind of one of those, like it's the classic subway. You just kind of look straight ahead, right? You don't necessarily interact with all the other people that are
Yeah.
there. You just like kind of focus straight ahead. But that doesn't happen to us, because, our business has built this persona of being very approachable and
Yeah.
very, engaging. And it's like, and I need to make sure, like, I can't be there all the time. Like,
Yeah.
our people have to make sure that they're doing that as well, because that's who they need to be. And that's they
Well,
need, how they need to represent our business.
and if you take it in that way as well, like how has we talked a lot about your community involvement, right? How has your community involvement maybe influenced your business, or maybe changed your business in some way? Has it? I mean, it seems as if they're
Well,
kind of one and the same the way that you talk about it.
yeah, I mean, I think that that's like part of, my responsibility as a business owner here locally, is that like I
Mm,
should be part of the fabric of this community in ways beyond just being an extractive, part of it. That, hey, look, I
right.
need to have this thing, and you need to pay me money, and we're gonna do. But it's like, okay, how are we being additive to the community around us? And I think that's a big part of what I see, and one of the passions that I have around this stuff. I mean, at the end of it, and part of this is just like a personal like thing, right? If
Yeah.
if my, like, don't get me wrong, I like painting. It's all right. But if like my like big, it's like if my purpose was just to put paint on the walls, I don't think I'd still be doing this 37 years later. I think that there's a bigger purpose behind what I'm supposed to be doing here. And part of that purpose is demonstrating all these things, all these behaviors of like being engaged in the community. And so, yeah, like I really enjoy that piece of things. Like I enjoy, I spent 7 years with the chamber doing stuff between board service there, I chaired the board there. And again, and I think that was one of those spaces where it's like, and our local chamber does a great job of this. It's like, I thought it was awesome. It's like here, I remember going to my first board meeting. I'm like sitting there, I'm like, holy smokes, I'm sitting in this meeting. It's like, here we are. And we were a pretty small business then. We maybe had like 20, 25 people. And like I'm sitting here in this board meeting with like, some guy from High Associates, some guy from Lancaster General, somebody from Armstrong, and like, no, it's like small business is like recognized, and I think our community does this really well, recognizes the power of small business, the impact that small business has, and I knew, okay, I need to be here and represent that constituency throughout this entire thing. And so that's one of the things that I think I need to do and can do. And has that been beneficial to the business? It's like, well, sure. It's like I've like been there and so gotten to connect with lots of people. Our business has been kind of elevated into different areas. And but it's funny, I talk about that all the time, like with my sales staff, because I'm like, so like, hey, you need to go out to this business and do something. It's like, so I know the owner, we sit on these boards together. It's like, chances are they're not the one that's buying the paint job, though. That might
sorry,
open
the president of the hospital really doesn't know what maintenance is doing.
Yeah. Although, ironically, but we paint for the president of the hospital, so we paint his personal house, but, is that going to get us anything not in the corporate, environment and the commercial prospects there? It's like, maybe not, but it's like, how do all those relationships, they do matter somewhere. I mean, Lancaster's a small enough town that all
giving,
of those.
It's kind of like you're saying that you're giving so much back, you almost receive, kind of like what we were taught as kids, right?
Yeah.
Like if you give and you will receive, and relevant to what that fruit is. People that are trying to start their business in like a local community, say it's not even in Lancaster, what advice would you give them to kind of employ, the same leadership and positive community impact that your organization is driving? Is there like one or two things that you could suggest to them?
Well, so I think what's interesting about this, so we're trying to do this even in a not local community. We're looking to expand our operation into different areas, like down into Chester County. And I'm like, it's like, this is like really interesting because I'm not from Chester County and I'm not there as part of the community and not there as part of the culture. And so your question is like relevant even back to what we're trying to do. So, and a lot of the strength of how we've grown our business has been these relationships and engagement with the local community in really meaningful ways. And so, yes. So to answer your question, I tell people, hey, look, just be out there, make sure you're connecting with people and connect with them in meaningful ways. And, yes, give and you shall receive kind of stuff, but don't expect to receive. Don't do this. None of this stuff can be done. I mean, we've all heard this. Like, you can't expect that to happen.
Right.
It's like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, like, just get over yourself and just like keep doing the
you
things
give
that you
for the
value.
reason of giving, not for the reason of getting.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that kind of reciprocation of things, I mean, that's the bonus. That's not the expectation. And I mean, we've all seen that, right? We've seen the folks that are going to the networking things and passing out cards and trying to connect with people, and they're like, I didn't get anything out of this. And it's like, no, you're missing the point here, folks.
ROI 0.
And if that's the mentality around it, sure, you're not going to be successful. But the ROI on any of this stuff is sometimes, I mean, I've made some really great relationships with people that, you just don't ever have any idea like how and when and where, that's going to be impactful in your life and in ways that you would never expect. I mean, I can think of like, I remember a relationship. There was a realtor that, I started to develop a relationship with, and, I wasn't getting any business out of them. They weren't doing me any good. But you know what? When my son ended up buying a house, I had some things that were going on and just like called them to get they weren't even dealing with us. Like they weren't even a realtor on any side of the equation, but there was some advice that I got from them that ended up being like really, really valuable and influential and impactful in the situation I had at the time. And, I couldn't have gotten that if I didn't invest the time in just like getting to know somebody. And, the number of times that those things have happened, you just can't even begin to calculate
Right.
what
The
that means.
valuable.
And
Yeah.
if you're just like trying to calculate ROI on every minute of your day
Yeah.
and everything that you do, and this goes, I talked earlier about like how I like really value how I spend my time and how I like analyze like what I'm doing. It's like, well, that's part of it. It's just like, going to do things. I mean, I was out for breakfast this morning with my marketing staff here, and and we were sitting in a coffee shop downtown, and we were meeting with somebody from EDC, talking, again, just like building relationship there, making
Yeah.
sure, EDC is an important part in our community. Or how do we need to get involved with this place? What are they doing? And they were just like cracking up because like people were just like walking by and like, oh my God, Pete, freaking everybody, don't you? Yeah,
That's because
like,
they
I'm
walk by
sorry.
your house every day,
I'm sorry. This is like what I mean, yeah, isn't this what I'm supposed to be doing? Isn't this, I mean, at this point in my life, right? So what is the most impactful thing that I can do as, CEO and president of my company is making sure that we're represented in this community in a really, really robust way. I mean, all the
Right.
practical things at this point, going back to some of the focus of this, it's like I've had to build leaders into some of the practical functional areas that they are way, way better than I am at doing these things. I mean, I had to do it for years just because that was a function of what I
What
needed,
it needed. Yeah.
but I am not the best at a lot of this stuff. And I'm not, I can't execute on those things at the same level that, my operations guys can, that my marketing people can, that my HR people can. And so having people in here that have real subject matter expertise, and then, okay, Pete, what are you doing? And it's like, I guess I'm just hoping to direct this in a high level way and
Yeah.
establishing a culture for what our business needs to do and making sure that those people within the community and the connections that I have within the community that nobody else can do in the same way, that they can really be meaningful and fruitful for us as we continue to grow and evolve our business over the next couple of years. And so empowering people to do their roles, empowering them to take take authority, empowering them to like exceed the expectations maybe that I had or that I was capable of executing on. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's what I want. I mean, I want that in spades. If everybody can do that, then
Right.
we're all on a path to
Right.
success because your expertise coupled with your expertise coupled with your expertise is much, much more than any one of us could
Collective
accomplish
of
otherwise.
the whole than the
Yeah.
one. Yeah. What advice, Pete, would you give for someone that's aspiring to be a leader? Maybe they don't even know that they're a leader. What advice could you give them after 37 years of kind of doing this, right? Like what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, first of all, there's like uh, to have aspirations for for leadership. I think you have to start with a certain level of humility, right?
Mm,
Understand that you're not like going to blow into something and all of a sudden like whoo, you got this leadership role, and take that humility into that space of like
uh,
asking others to like engage you and talk to you and build relationships with others because you're going to learn a tremendous amount through
right.
that type of
Well, that's good
mentoring
advice.
that you're really going to learn much more quickly than just you doing things. I mean, I'm a pretty rabid reader, and so I read a ton of stuff. I connect with a ton of people. I've always tried to put myself into a position in multiple things that I do, whether it's in in peer groups that I'm involved with, in leadership groups that are involved with, even like down to like the people that I run with, that I think of myself as like the weakest person in that group,
Mm,
right? So you want to run with people that are faster than you. You want to
right.
learn leadership with people that are better than you.
Better than
You
you.
want to put
Yeah.
yourself in a peer group of people that are better than you, so
Yep.
that the expectation is that you're going to
Lift you up.
rise and they're going to lift you up. If I could get in, it's like, oh yeah, hey, I'm a big man on campus and I could do all these things. And it's like, well, I'm not learning then. I'm
Right.
missing out on opportunities. So I
You
want to be
become
there,
complacent then, It's
right?
like,
And
what am I gonna do?
right. And that's where this issue of humility comes back into play. It's like, look, it's like just be humble enough to understand that you don't know anything
I love that.
and that you can learn a lot from other people and that you can grow a lot from other people and be willing to take advantage of all those opportunities. And sometimes, yeah, is that a risk? Is it like scary sometimes walking
Yeah.
into the room? It's like, you bet it is. It's
Can
like,
be
I mean,
intimidating.
you should be, and if you're not intimidated in those situations, you're probably missing out on a lot of opportunities. If you're not
Yeah.
scared about about something, you're not taking any risk anywhere.
Right.
You're missing out on all those opportunities. So in terms of how you create this opportunity for leadership and where you create this opportunity to learn and grow, it's by seeking out people that are smarter, better, faster, stronger, whatever the issue might be, than what you are. And being humble enough to understand and appreciate that, and like kind of serving, sitting in this position of, look, I'm here to learn.
I love it. I love it. And you just mentioned a minute ago that you love to read. So give us maybe 3 of your top books that are kind of unilateral to like business or leadership or growth. This is the question that I learn every time. The last conversation I had, it was amazing. I found some books that I never even knew existed.
Right.
So ooh and ahs, Pete.
So the one over the last couple of years that I've referenced like lots of times in terms of how I'm doing things and what I need to do at this point, because we're making some transitions in our business and I'm trying to figure out like what's my role.
Yeah.
Is who, not how. Right.
I love it.
I think that's a book that you've read in the past.
Yeah, I love it.
But really, it's like, so being an entrepreneur, like, we've all come up through this moment of like, okay, how do I get all this stuff done? How do I get this stuff done? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to get this thing? And realizing that bringing other people in and really finding that expertise with someone outside of who we are and making that impact in a way that's really influential, that I can multiply the kind of effect of all this stuff by finding that right who for every situation. And sometimes I'm going to be the right who for things, and that's fine. And that's important to recognize that. But most times it's going to be somebody else's the right who, to really make an impact and have power and influence on things. So I'm looking at my bookshelf here.
Oh, all right. And I think the one that you need it's called Go Giver. Have you ever heard of that book?
No.
It's a small book and it's called The Go Giver. And it's the definition of what happens when you grow as a business. And it's kind of a fable about a young man that's getting into business and has a definition of what it means to be in business. Very similar to what we were talking about today, but what it means to give, which is pretty neat.
So the other one I'm just seeing, like kind of my favorite shelf here. So the Culture Code. Don't know if you know that one. That's really good, just about how you create culture within your business and the value and the impact of culture. I think that we are, and we've gone through times that our culture has really suffered, and like saw the impact that had on our staff and frankly, at the end of the day, on our results of things, and how that, really being able to refocus back on that. And again, the opportunity to refocus on it, that was a who can focus on it. I couldn't I didn't have the time, the effort, and the energy to really focus on it as much. So I found that who that could come in and say, hey, look, you need to refocus on this thing. This is the foundation of what we believe in. Make sure that all these things that I'm talking about, that we're actually doing those things and executing on them in real time. And so that's been really, really impactful and important things. And then the other one is first break all the rules. Ooh, and and that's really about just like understanding, hey, and look, that's what we've done like forever. I mean, it's just like part of me is like, well, what are you doing here? It's like, I don't know, it's like, first of all, the idea of having a painting company called Two Dudes Painting Company, and then driving around in these like old Volkswagen buses, and then just like having this whole, I mean, I remember early on people like, who are these guys? What in the world is going on? It's like, oh, you know what? The end result was, hey, we were just being true to who we were as people, and that's the important thing, and that's shown
just being
through
authentic.
And it was about just like be your true authentic self, break the rules of what you think, business, society, whatever it is demands, but be true to what the kind of proverbial foundation of your own existence is. And if you really believe that, you're living that in the right way, you're going to be successful. All the stuff of like, giving back to the community in these ways that I just thought were really important. That I remember early on we were doing some stuff, and we spent plenty of years. We like literally made no money. We were just like literally scraping to get by. And remember, the guy was like helping us out with some of our finances, and he was just like doing, entering our QuickBooks stuff, doing that kind of thing. And it was around Christmas time, and we were doing some stuff, and we were like, we were like giving money to some community organizations. He's like, It's like, what? He's like, well, I was like, just put this in the books, just understand what's going on. He's like, and he's like talking to me. He's like, Pete, you haven't taken any money, you haven't taken a salary in 2 months. And I was like, yeah, but you know what's really important? This is really important. And
Yeah.
like that's going to be, just like understanding like what is the important things. And it's like, whatever, I can sacrifice some things for myself, but if I see
Right.
the value in some other thing that we're doing, or the value of some other relationship that is going to be more important than some moment in time that I might have or some experience,
Right.
it's like and this is just sacrificing in many different forms, right? And we can,
Right.
whether it's financially, time wise, just the effort that you're making, or just even just like spending time and sitting with somebody, like those things are really important, and really understanding like how all of that matters, and being able to line those things up in ways that make sense to you. They might not make
Right.
sense to anybody else. And a
Right.
lot of times they don't make sense. Some of the choices that we've made over the years, like people are like, what in the world? It's like, what's this? Remember one guy that's working with us, he was like, his father said, you can't be a dude forever. And just because at the time, this was like probably 25 years ago, 30, actually
Ah,
30 years ago, and there wasn't faith and confidence in what two dudes was ever going to become. And I get it. I mean,
ah.
it wasn't a derogatory thing, but it's like, chances are you can't be a dude forever. This guy's worked for us for over 17 years,
Oh,
and
wow.
he's there, and he's still part of the
He's an
organization.
ultimate dude.
So he knew what it meant to be a dude, and he had belief and faith in
Wow.
it, and he's helped to build us to where we are right now. And he's like one of the foundational pillars of our organization. And so by having that and just being really believing in yourself, being true to ourselves, we didn't take a path. I mean, we could have taken, I could have read all the entrepreneurial leadership books in the world. And yeah, I've learned something, and I have read a lot of that stuff, but it's like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like, some of those things don't resonate with me. And
Right.
I need to do the things that I believe are going to be the right things. And yeah, lots of mistakes, lots of problems, lots of challenges, but it's like,
As
I don't know,
always, right?
here we are.
Well, as we kind of wrap up for today, what do you have any closing comments or feedback for the listeners that you think they should know?
No, I think that last bit really summed up a lot of it. Is like
Yeah.
be true to
True to
yourself,
yourself.
right? Be
I
true
love
to
it.
your beliefs. Be true to what, and and understanding that your rewards come in many different ways. So some of my rewards, they might not be the kind of financial rewards that some people really value, but my rewards come in other ways. Just like seeing the successes of like of other people,
Yeah.
seeing the opportunity to grow in different ways, seeing the kind of really fun and exciting projects that we get to be part of, and just seeing the impact that that has on other people. I mean, one of the things that we do, right? And this is just a quick final story here. So we paint these murals around town, right? And so one of my favorite murals is on Manor Street, right across from the Kunzler factory. You've probably seen this driving up Manor Street. It's this kid, he has his arms raised in the air. It says
Yeah.
"Rise with
Yeah.
strength." And we were painting that mural, and we're developing the plan to do this, getting all this stuff together. And and that was purely a self-generated project. And we said, hey, we want to put something here.
Ah.
And so I literally am knocking on the door of the house, and it's like, hey, do you mind if we paint this mural on the side of your building? He's like, yeah, sure, do whatever you want. And so we're painting this thing, and remember our artists were there, and they were painting this it's a young boy with his arms raised in the air. And it's that Superman pose, right? It's a position of power. And it says "Rise with strength." And there's a McCaskey bus stop right across the street, so there's like 50 kids
Ah.
there.
Ha ha.
That's what they look at every day: "Rise with strength." And we had just finished painting that young man on the wall, and there were a couple kids walking up the street. I happened to be walking home from work that day, and these kids, like, they saw this mural for the first time, and these kids, yeah, it grows. And it's like, holy smokes, it's like we gave them that, and that position, right? Superman pose, the Wonder Woman pose, you
Yeah.
crossed the finish line, you won the race, you raise your arms in victory. Like, we gave that to those kids. Like, that wouldn't have been there. And like, that just gives me chills to think about the power and the impact that we can have just on putting this thing on the side of a building, using our
Yeah.
creativity in a way that like created this good for these kids. It's just like this little moment of positivity in their lives
Yeah.
that just
An
is like
impact.
made a power and had some impact. And it's like, and I think that's what we're all here to do. It's like, how do we create that positive moment in somebody else's life? Create the positivity for yourself, you know, spread that out throughout the community, spread that with your family, spread that with your workforce, spread that larger level. It's like that's what our role is in this society. And if we can all do that, we're all going to be successful then.
Well, I love it. That's a way to wrap it up. That's powerful. I love that. And that's a wrap. That's another
All
episode
right.
of Servant Leadership Library.
All right.
So I'm excited that we had Pete here today. I'm your host, Nicholas Paulukow, CEO of One to One, your go-to MSP and cybersecurity IT firm. We had a fantastic time chatting with Pete today, one of the dynamic founders of Two Dudes Painting Company. And Pete and his team are the real deal, using their certified B Corporation status to show that business can indeed be a powerful force for good, like he was just saying. From his roles with the Lancaster Chamber, the Lancaster City Home Rule, commissions, Pete's commitment to community and leadership shines through, as you can obviously tell. And thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or maybe even share it with your favorite superhero or a painter even. Until next time, keep leading with heart, stay safe in the cyber world, and remember, a little paint and a lot of passion can go a long way.